Entrepreneurs, are you looking to gain an edge in your business? Today, we're sitting down with Cyndi Padilla, the founder of Gain the Edge. If you're ready for a top-notch sales team to help you grow your business, Jim and his wife started their business for one reason only, to take successful, purpose-driven businesses to the next level. Simply not working on sales, but working on the systemized process, the holistic theory of what you're trying to accomplish with your product or service, and helping you not only go to market, but also create campaigns following your go-to-market strategy to execute a strong sales pipeline where when the buyers are ready to buy, they will buy from you. If you're an entrepreneur looking to grow your business, you got to sit down and listen to this conversation with Cyndi Padilla. Jim, welcome to the Entrepreneurs United podcast, and thank you for joining us today. I can't wait to dive into gaining the edge. All entrepreneurs want to gain the edge. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Honored to be able to serve, and always excited to share whatever experience and insights that I can.
Great. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to dive in more. A lot of entrepreneurs, know that every entrepreneur knows sales is a critical element. I want to learn a little more about your history and what you do as a business, but first and foremost, why Gain the Edge? It's a sales-focused enterprise that you have that helps businesses. How did this come to be? Why did you start this business, and what are you guys doing exactly?
Well, Gain the Edge is actually, I've been a lifelong entrepreneur while my wife was corporate retail management. And I was, building businesses, crashing businesses, doing all that stuff like a good entrepreneur does. And then 2013, my wife decided she was done with corporate retail and left that and jumped into business with me. And I'm the visionary. I solve problems, big ideas, big strategies. She's phenomenal at taking those strategies and insights and actually implementing and executing. And our team building all the systems that make a company designed to actually make revenue. Most companies are designed to deliver a product. We make sure that they're actually designed to generate revenue so that you have predictable, consistent revenue, which then doesn't require the founder or a rock star team of closers in order to sell your stuff. You just need a good system to follow and somebody that can implement be on brand for you and take care of business. Okay. That's the core of the business, model that we're in. We're in our 8th year. We started with jumping into support a launch for an up and coming rock star at the time, Bill Barron, and he was looking to do his first 7-figure launch. We helped him do it. It was the first launch we ever did. We had no idea what a launch was or what we were doing, but we had said yes. Okay. And $1.6 million launch, and 2 weeks later there was a line at the door. We spent the next couple of years doing $50 million worth of launches and live events, and then people started looking for help between live events. And so then our evergreen high ticket sales team was born. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 6 years plus, is installing sales teams. We are a fractional outsourced sales division, so we step into people's companies and become an extension of their brand and hold down the anchor as the chief revenue officer and the one entity in your company that is actually focused on generating revenue every day.
Okay, awesome. A lot there to unpack. Yeah. So first off, you did your first launch. You didn't even know what a launch was. Yes. Help me. What is a launch? I don't know if I quite understand what that is.
Yeah, well, it's a product launch is what we're referring to, and in the coaching consulting world, which is where we spend a lot of our time, it's very common to do a launch, whether it's a new product or for a new season. So a lot of people will do a launch once or twice a year and bring a new product to market or start a whole new cohort. Maybe looking for 100 new clients and you start them all together. And there's some strong formulas that people follow, the methodologies around that. And I had never heard of one or done one. We just said yes because that's what entrepreneurs do. And,
exactly. So when I think about that, though, Jim, just for a second, when I think about that, I envision like the Apple launch of the iPhone, right? And it's like an event, it's launching a product and everybody stands out the door to go buy it. Is that what you're talking about?
That, yes. And in other worlds, it's referred to as like a national ad campaign. Like you're going to launch, you're going to do something because you have a big initiative that you want everybody to know about. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense to go out and hire 10, 20 or 1,000 new salespeople just for a short period of time and then let them all go. And so you bring in a company like us, we have all the salespeople, and then you don't have to train, hire, develop them all. We just got to bring them in, get them ready to go, and then we're off on another initiative. And so it's an interesting business model because it keeps variety and excitement in play. And then for the right people, they're looking for more support between events, and then we find a home.
Okay. So in terms of, we have all the salespeople. When you say that specifically, are these product launches, I'm assuming mostly geared B2C?
Uh, Tend to, or a lot of our clients serve entrepreneurs, so it's B2B, but it's B to small b, right?
Okay.
So
So
lowercase
a
b.
general category of entrepreneurs. So maybe a business product as an example, but all entrepreneurs would apply to it. So your salespeople can shift their strategy to that pretty simply. It doesn't have to be product. Industry expertise is not needed necessarily for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing because a lot of people think that now it's you got to be clear on your initiative when you're hiring a sales team or growing a sales team because you might want them to have a book of business, but a lot of times the specific industry expertise is overrated
Hmm.
because if you're good in selling and if you have a great system, a great offer, a great process, then you're really selling to the needs of the buyer. You're not selling the product. And
Okay.
so somebody doesn't have to be great at the product. They need to be really great at diagnosing a problem and then prescribing a solution.
Okay, awesome. So Jim, let's walk all the way back. We'll come back to the business in a second.
Yeah.
Want to learn a little bit more about Jim, the person. I see a little bit of sports background. Tell us a little bit more about that, your upbringing, how you got into being an entrepreneur, and why you developed or how you developed your sales expertise to find yourself in today's position.
Yeah, it's I won't go through the whole story, but obviously the overview of I grew up in a challenging environment. I was born to teenage parents. They did the best they could with what they had, but I grew up with a lot of abuse and a lot of very challenging circumstances. Ended up in foster care and on the streets at 16 and in jail by 19. And I learned a lot in that first 20 years of life, having to read my environment every day. I got really good at learning how to read the room and bend the will and the influence of that room to my direction so that I wouldn't be seen as a threat and I could be safe. And that was a powerful skill set because little did I know over the next 20 years I'd make millions of dollars teaching other people those same skills, how to read a room and bend people's influence to your direction so that they don't see you as a threat but as a resource and want to be able to do business with you. And of course that's helped us immensely by being able to step in as an outsourced sales division and being able to read the room and blend into your environment so that we become an extension of your brand, sell your product versus just a team of closers that are pushing our product on people. And it's been a great opportunity. I spent the 25 years of my life was definitely a lot of school of hard knocks. Learned everything I could possibly the hard way, and wasn't until I met my wife when I recognized that there's another way to do things. She was the first person that I could say I actually learned that I had some worth and value, that I wasn't just somebody had to fight for my scraps every single day, and that there was something more to be had. And it took a skill set that I learned and then really started learning how to serve people powerfully because I always had a great skill set and a tip, but I sold to other people because of my own needs. And I learned how to sell to people because of what they need. And never have made more money in my life since then. Being truly of service to others is the only real recipe for success, in my opinion. And our record has shown us that.
Very powerful for you to just share so plainly and openly being a victim of abuse, passed around the foster care system, and having landed yourself in jail. I think that's uh, frankly inspiring that you speak about it in that plane of language and that are that open about it. And how cool that after 25 years, then you met your wife
Yeah.
and she turned you on to a different way to live. I would love to know, how did that work? What did she turn you on to? So, for anyone of our listeners who may not have turned the corner quite yet themselves, what did she do for you that you may be able to describe that may even help turn the corner for someone else?
Yeah, well, oh, thanks for the acknowledgement. The biggest thing, number one, she introduced me to God, and God, once God was always there. I think He's the one that kept me alive that whole time, because He had bigger purpose for me. But what she did specifically is I came through the divorce, bankruptcy, and all this other nonsense, really believing I had nothing to offer the world and was pretty kind of given up. And the thing she showed me was that because I had nothing, and she chose me anyway. She chose me. She helped me understand that I had worth and value, and that I had something to give that had nothing to do with my material status in the world. And when you have that, you're invincible. When you know you have worth and value, then you can. It helps you see the world a little bit more clearly and plainly, and especially in the sales game or as an entrepreneur. Um, Most of the time, when somebody buys from you, it's because they're broken in whatever capacity you help fix. And from that brokenness is a very hard place to make great decisions. And so when you learn that it's about value and worth, no matter what you're selling, if you can help people make a great decision from above the mess, it's so much easier for them to figure out what they need to do instead of just being trapped as a victim of their circumstance because they're not producing revenue, or they're not producing a relationship, or they're not producing whatever it is you solve. um, you're making decisions from pain and frustration, and it's so much better. I've learned to be able to bring people above all of that and show them what's possible. And then the key here is helping them make a decision, because the root word of decision is about cutting off. It's killing off, right? So if decide is to kill off all other options. And when you're helping somebody in the sales process, your job is to get them to decision, because now they can either decide that the past is no longer going to affect them because they're going to go do things differently, or that the future is not what they want because they still are not ready to solve their problem. But either way, you're helping them get to a place of clarity. And you can only do that when things are right inside of you.
What do you understand today about yourself? What do you understand to be your gift?
My gift is the ability to see the greatest possible outcome in people, and then give them the inspiration to overcome the obstacles that may come in the way. I always see the high side of the opportunity. It doesn't matter what it is. And I think that's the gift that God gave me with the upbringing that I had. If it doesn't kill you, it only makes you stronger.
Greatest possible outcome in people. And then what was the next part of what you shared?
Yeah, and then inspiring them to take action and overcome whatever obstacles appear.
Mm. Can you give an example of a time when you did that for a client of yours?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of times people come into us and they're looking to sell a product, and once I make sure that they can enroll me or us into their vision. Like, why are you selling this product? I don't care about your product. I care about the mission that you're on and the people you want to help and the movement you're making or creating or whatever that is. And when I can see that that's a possible outcome, now I'm selling that to you. I'm selling you that vision and helping you see that this is absolutely worth fighting for. And it's now time to do whatever is necessary to make sure that you can conquer that mountain, because there are people who need it. Right. And I'm a hopeless romantic about entrepreneurs saving the world. I believe that, anything that's going to happen positive and great and getting our America and then this world on track is going to be on the backs of entrepreneurs who are solving problems to go. So it's incumbent upon us as business builders with the duty and the responsibility to be the best possible versions of ourselves and our business, because we can change the world in scales.
What did you learn during the time that you were in jail that if you had not spent time there, you may not have learned?
That the first thing is that everything's overcomable, everything's fixable, and that if you're still alive, you still have purpose. And even inside, God showed me that it was time to slow down, take a look at the people around, that everybody has a specific purpose. And so that's not about labels and what people are doing. It's about what they are capable of doing. And you meet some of the coolest people, some of the most, a lot of people just made mistakes. I zigged when they zagged, otherwise I'd be in prison still too. And we've all done stupid things. And when we can when we can break down the labels and the gaps between people, then it's just about people who are looking to achieve something and live into their life, and we can help them see what's possible and remove the barriers on them. That's what most of my journey was in that first 20 years, was just starting to learn that you know uh, life isn't as crazy as we, or I guess maybe it's only as crazy as we make it, but it's got, everybody, it has worth and everybody has value regardless of what they look like or where they came from.
Yeah, Jim, I can imagine that, when you coach and work with entrepreneurs and they you their problem du jour and they're down about it, your perspective must be unbelievable, right? Because it's like, hey, hold on a second. Like, I know you lost a key employee, but, take it easy, right?
Yeah.
Have some perspective here in life. That problem is very minuscule in the grand scheme of things that you've experienced, we've all experienced at different times, and we all will continue to experience. And I really love when you say, that you learned everything is overcomable, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs through COVID went through a tough time. Maybe there's a recession coming, they'll go through a tough time. There's different scenarios, and I really love the way you look at that. So I'd love to kind of continue along one of the lines of questioning that Rich had here, but just to kind of give an example. You don't even have to tell us what the product was exactly, or the name of it, but can you give me an example of maybe one of your success stories of an entrepreneur that came to you and said, look, I would like some assistance, whether it be fractional sales assistance or consulting or coaching or whatever it may be, and how you help that entrepreneur really flourish?
Sure. So, as I was saying, people come to us, usually their focus is, I'm selling this product. And what we unpack is that instead of coming with this, you're selling a coaching product, which is very common for our clients, and they're looking to sell it to a certain level of person. And what we take in that is we say, okay, what are we going to do with this? What is the ultimate outcome? What's the mountaintop experience if somebody uses your product? And what are the problems they're going to experience along the way? So that now you're starting to create a path of success for these people. And then you also anticipate, since you're the creator of that path, you can also anticipate the problems they're going to experience along the way, and then build a more product line that supports that. So you're increasing the lifetime value of the client, which means more revenue to you, more, less client acquisition cost, more profit, more opportunity. And then you have a greater chance to actually solve the people's problem over the long haul, instead of just taking the product you have and giving a band-aid fix for this temporary solution. Right. That's a very common, that's a common situation that comes up for us all the time with probably the 100 clients we've had that fit into that mold.
Okay.
Right.
So you mentioned coaching products. So hypothetically, Entrepreneurs United is going to launch a coaching service for entrepreneurs.
Right.
As opposed to Rich and I networking everybody we know and say, hey, buy from us, come do what we do, come use our product, or, coaching product. We would work with Gain the Edge on the holistic vision of what we're trying to accomplish, all the way down to a sales strategy that Gain the Edge helps us execute, so that Rich and I can focus on coaching and not focus on
Correct.
sales.
Amen. Yeah, exactly. And, you just mentioned coming through the pandemic and into a pending recession, or whatever you want to call it, fill in the blank with whatever word fits. The people that's a very real thing. And what we have to understand as entrepreneurs is that whoever you serve, whoever your market is, they are they are not the same that they were 2 years ago. They're filled with fear and doubt and hesitation. People are just very uncertain and unclear in the decisions that they're making. And we're moving to a place where the dollar isn't worth what it was, and prices are going up. And it just, all that does is inspire more fear and doubt and concerns and hesitation. And so it is incumbent upon you. It is your duty and responsibility as an entrepreneur to master your offer, master your sales journey. You're the person that's going to be the beacon of hope in the community of people that you serve, because they're nervous right now. They're thinking, should I let go of employees? Should I reduce my product line? Should I lower my prices? All of those things that they're doing, which could detrimentally impact their own circumstance. And you have to be the one to help them see, no, you got to be, you have to be razor sharp. You have to be laser focused. And this is not the time to circle the wagons and go on defense. This is the time to go on offense as a business owner. When everybody else is running for safety, you got to show up and say, hey, I know the way, and I'm going here, and I want to help you come too, because that's the person who's going to ride the wave to success while everybody else is being, run over by the wave.
Okay. So love that. And again, you mentioned coaching products or kind of a segment you work with a lot. What would be number 2, 3, or 4 in terms of examples of types of products or services that you guys have specialized in and knocked out of the park?
Coaching and consulting is about 50% of our business. We work with financial service companies, capital raise companies. We work with multifamily syndication companies that are doing big capital raises for their investments. Work with legal firms that are selling, legal services, entities, stuff at scale. And so anybody who is in those lanes, if you're a professional service provider, we work well there. If you're
Mm.
selling products and technology, it's not our particular lane, although we can certainly help with strategy and insight. We don't provide sales teams for those because it's typically a longer sales cycle and more product demonstration, which is not our bailiwick. We have,
Okay.
service-based opportunities. We're good at selling the intangible. We're selling the
Okay.
future. We're selling an outcome.
Okay. Got it. So I want to just maybe take this down one last step. So professional services sweet spot. We work with you. We come together holistically with our strategy, what we're really trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do, and it's like, okay, now we want 1,000 clients. Let's go.
Yeah.
What exactly does Gain the Edge do? Maybe more specifically and tactically on marketing to sales to delivery, of the sale. In other words, are your sales reps cold calling? Are they sending out emails? What are they doing exactly to generate the sales?
Yeah, well, it's going to depend on your offering and your market, because for some people, some industries, the most effective thing is outbound dialing. We have call center and make that happen. For others, it's direct mail. For other industries, they're really good at triggering somebody to raise their hand, and then it's inbound traffic. So the key for us is we're looking for as many qualified booked appointments as possible. And so in order to make that happen, you got to have a system that can produce it. So usually the first step we're coming into play is let's get a system created that is going to deliver a consistent flow of qualified booked appointments. Because from that, you can then produce rockstar salespeople, as opposed to going to recruit rockstar salespeople to sell your product, because there's no real system in place, and then you have to have superstars. And so we will refine your offer, because typically most people's offer sucks. And you got a great solution, it just isn't packaged really well, and it's not very compelling, which is why people don't buy it unless they're in massive need. And then it requires a top tier salesperson in order to push that product, and we don't want that. We want you to have a great offer zeroed in on a person with a bleeding neck problem, and a really well constructed prospect journey that moves people consistently towards the solution of that problem, so that every time they're in every step they take in your world, they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense, I belong here. Then now the great part of that is you can just take a good person who's just a decent salesperson who can follow a system and consistently and predictably overachieve for you.
Okay. All right. A couple questions on this one. So
Sure.
where does digital marketing to create an appointment cross over with sales?
Yeah, digital marketing is a very important part of the process. I believe that the marketing is really just an extension of the sales process, because to me the sales conversation begins at hello. So the first time they're in your world, you are now starting the engagement process. So digital marketing is about getting in front of the right people, triggering the right responses around the problem that they have, and
Mhm.
letting them know that this is the problem worth solving. And then giving them choices along the way. Is this a now problem? Is this something that you're exploring? So if they're exploring, then there becomes a nurture process of them learning about you. If they're looking to solve a now solution, then we're looking for the fastest path to get them in a conversation with somebody on your team, or a presentation, whatever that looks like, whether it's a webinar, a live event, or a one-on-one conversation. But we want to make sure we get the people who need it the fastest path to an opportunity to talk about solving their problem, right? And so digital marketing serves that well, because especially in an era where if your product is not geography based and locked, then the world is your oyster. It's an international global market right now. So as long as you can tap into that culture and make sure that it's a good fit, then you can now bring people from all different locations. And then it's just a matter of moving them on a journey that helps them assess themselves along the way to make sure they know they're in the right spot. And then the other piece that you want to be thinking about is, how much of the problem can you solve before they ever get here? Because if people, conventional wisdom is don't solve all their problem before they buy from you. That's not how business of the future, I think, is going to be done. If I can solve your problem for free, you're going to come back to me later when you have a bigger problem to solve because I've already proven my value to you.
Yep. So I'm assuming then the digital marketing, which is part of the sales process, because the first moment they see you, whether it be a direct mail piece or your website or your LinkedIn profile or whatever, I'm assuming you guys touch all of that.
Right.
So do you guys have digital marketing expertise in-house as well?
We do. We help put the strategy together. We don't
Okay.
do, we don't build funnels and do digital marketing, but we have a lot of partners in-house who do. So once we nail the right strategy, then we bring in the partners that are necessary, whether you're going to build a YouTube ad campaign, a Facebook campaign, or just a direct mail, whatever it might be.
Okay.
But the most important thing is that in today's digital economy, most companies are comprised of multiple different companies.
Yeah.
Because they're outsourced agencies and stuff. And so what we do is it's imperative that you're operating from one strategy. And that's usually where things start falling apart because the marketing company might have their own strategy, a funnel company might have their own, sales company has their own, and then you may have your own, and everything has to work from one spot. And so as the chief revenue officer, which is the role we play, you need to have somebody inside of your company who sits at the top of that and oversees all of it, and nothing goes on the plan that doesn't fit into the strategy. So then everybody coming in is all working from the same page.
Yep. Okay. So if I'm listening to this conversation and I have a product or service that I'm going to launch or an offer I want to put out there, I've zeroed in on a few. Rich, you may have some as well. Kind of some tidbits that you've given that I should probably reconsider if I'm heading on the right track on some of these. One is your offer or product needs to zero in on the bleeding neck issue. Like
Yes.
What is going on specifically? Very targeted, bleeding neck issue. Second, one that I captured here that you just threw out, which I agree with wholeheartedly, is you should be trying to solve the problem before they buy, not try and hide the solution behind the paywall. Yeah. And that will get people to wanting to be participating in your product or service more. And the last one is when they go through the sales process, whether it be your website or any process they go through, the consumer should have the feeling I belong here. This is kind of meant for me to go through. So those are three things that I captured that if your product or service or launch doesn't have these three things, you're probably on the wrong track. What would be 4, 5, 6, or 7 or other pieces that maybe people make mistakes on or should be doing differently?
Yeah, great questions, because those are things that you have to make sure that you know exactly what it looks like for them to have a problem solved, because then you can identify it for them, right? A lot of times you can't make the mistake of assuming that everybody else understands the problem that they're trying to solve. Most people don't know what the real problem is, and they sure as heck don't know how to articulate it. So be the person who can, you're telling them what to think. You're shifting the narrative. Right. So you're letting people know that this is what it looks like to be solved. And so you're saying, this is the problem you're likely having. And I know this because I've helped thousands of people and they have it too. And what you're doing is you're giving them something to buy into instead of them trying to search for words they don't have, because this is not a problem they've ever had in their life before, but they have it now. Right. So we're waiting for them to prescribe and diagnose a problem that they're not even sure how to identify. So that's too risky, right? Make sure that you, as the expert of the problem, can speak to it in ways that help them understand, yeah, that is a problem I have. Like when we're talking to people, it's like, okay, well, how many people have you hired and fired? How many times have you hung on to somebody that you should have let go of, but if you let go of them, now you got to recruit somebody, you got to find it. And so you deal with less than. Everybody I talk to has had one of those or has them, right? So I don't have to wait for him to tell me what that problem is. Right, things of that nature. How many times you hung on to a salesperson? Usually when I used to do a lot more cold calling myself, first thing I would ask somebody, I'd get the sales manager on the phone and I would say, hey, tell me the name of the person that you should have fired, but you hang on to it because you like him. Every sales manager can at least name one person like that.
Yep.
Right. But that's a function of a poorly operating system. Something that either let's put a system in place that's going to help him be the hero, or put a system in place that will help you lead him or lose him. right? So you need to understand all of the ins and outs of your ideal client's buyer journey and their pains and solutions, and don't wait for them to give you the words. You give them the words to sink into. So that's a piece. Here's the other thing that I will tell you. Don't recruit top tier rock stars. We don't even look for level 10 salespeople. We look for level 10 humans who are level 7 salespeople. Make sure that they're on values, on brand, on match for you. Because if they are a values fit for your company and they're on brand and they understand the journey of your people and they have a decent skills, you can teach them sales skills. But the rest of that stuff you can't teach. Recruit for people who really appreciate the opportunity, who believe in what you're doing and want you to win, and so they can see what's at stake for the other people who are coming into your world, and they will fight for them to win as well. Versus top tier closer who's looking to, I understand the mindset, man. My closers are a tough breed. They're tough to manage. They're lone rangers. They get bored easy. They're always looking for the next big kill, the next deal. Those aren't the people that you want for a long-term success.
I think I'm getting this whole package, and it's getting me excited to understand it. Is the idea significant problem that they have, and then you don't need level 10. You don't even need level 10 salespeople. You could use a level 7 salesperson. Maybe they even stay at a level 7, as long as they understand how to help customers identify that they have that problem. Right. And then there you are with a solution, particularly if, to your words, you have a system of creating qualified booked appointments. So I'd like to double click on that area and go, so a system of creating qualified booked appointments. Can you give an example of what a system of doing that looks like?
Sure. One very common system is a cold traffic strategy. So a Facebook ad that leads to a page, a video that prompts them to opt in for a webinar. That the webinar unpacks the problem. You invite them to an opportunity to talk to somebody on your team, and they go. So this whole process is essentially a qualifying process. They're saying, yes, this is the problem I have. Yeah, I want to learn more. Yeah, this webinar seems to help me understand that you know how to solve my problem, and I would love to talk to somebody on your team about how to match them to, how to find out about specific solution. Right. And then once you have that, then you're also putting in qualifiers along the way. Are you a business at $1 million or more? Are you a business who's a first timer? I mean, you need to know your niche and who you serve, so that you're asking the questions that they can self-select into and say, yep, that's me. He's asking the right questions. He's talking to me. And it helps you determine, is this somebody that you can solve for now, or somebody that you need to nurture along the way to get them ready. Right. And then making sure at that time that you have all the right resources in place for your sales team to be able to identify these people and then continue to serve them. Because whatever their conversion rate is, 10, 20, 30, 50%, there's the opposite number of people who won't buy today, which means now most companies are decent, and I will say decent, not good, at a good nurture campaign on the back end. But most companies are woefully neglect at working pipelines. And so pipelines come from salespeople. Nurture comes from the company typically. So if you have an automated nurture, that means you've got some preset, here's what we're going to do to follow up. If you have a pipeline, then you have sales team that is moving and building a relationship to continue the quest with them. Right. So, and we work pipelines like crazy. That's where we have more sales that come from pipelines than from on the front end. And this is a big, I don't know why in the year 2022, most people just don't work pipelines anymore, because I think that's foolishness, because there's more profit to be made there than anywhere else. Especially the most expensive thing you're going to do is acquire a client. Pay for a click and a journey. So you got to do everything you can to reduce that cost by getting more people a second, third, fourth, or 22nd opportunity to come back to the table and have another conversation. So you got to make sure that all of that is happening. And when you do, you're qualifying these people every step along the way, and they're continuing to receive value and relevance from you, so that when they're ready to buy, you're the person they're buying from. Right. So there's a lot of moving parts in that. But if it were easy, everybody'd do it. Right. And that's the thing. We don't promise is easy, but we do promise, effectiveness and win.
Come back for me. What is a nurture campaign? I've never heard those two words.
Sure. Nurture campaign is when somebody comes into your world and they don't take action, you want to continue to nurture the relationship. And so a lot of times it's, hey, getting them on your newsletter, getting them onto your weekly email, inviting them to your upcoming presentations, whether it's an event or a webinar of some kind. It's typically referred to as nurture, but it's also often confused with a pipeline, and nurture is not a pipeline.
Got it. So a nurture campaign, as you're defining it, is an inactive prospect who's on a list in some way.
Yeah.
Versus a pipeline is someone who has taken action at some point, and they may have stalled in the process and need continued communication. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Very well stated. Yeah. Because usually we start working a pipeline from the time they've had a buying opportunity and didn't take action. Or even if it's a part of your ascension, maybe that buying opportunity was for your lower end product, and that the goal is to move them through your ascension model, in which case you're still working that pipeline actively so that they're buying the next level product when they're ready to.
Got it. My assumption is, in the example that you gave with the system creating qualified booked appointments, you said Facebook ad to video to webinar. On the webinar, the customer can identify that they have the problem and self-qualify, and then that converts into a one-on-one consult. So at the end of every one of these systems, I'm assuming it ends in a one-on-one consult. So it's the front end of how to get them there is the part that may change depending on what the service is. Can you give other examples of systems that ultimately yield a one-on-one consult?
Yeah, absolutely. The way we look at it is QBA, what we call it, qualified booked appointments. That's the center of the hub, and then all the spokes on the wheel are different lead generation channels. So one could be the one we just talked about. Another one could be maybe you're doing podcast interviews, which then lead people to an opt-in of some kind, which then leads them to another opportunity to have a conversation. You could be doing speaking gigs. You could have a YouTube ad strategy. You could have direct mail campaign, right? The key is that at some point they should all be leading people to a qualified booked appointment, which doesn't always have to be with a salesperson. If it's a low enough price point, then maybe they can just watch a video sales letter that converts the sale. But that becomes the qualified booked appointment itself, right? And so it's not about having as many spokes on the wheel as you can. It's about getting multiple spokes working, right? Start out with one, get it working, get another one, get it working, get another one. But too many people, I think one of the biggest challenges for most entrepreneurs today is they've got 15 spokes on the wheel and none of them work very well.
Yeah. Does this also work for recruiting? So having a system that will yield qualified booked interviews to fill 100%. A role? And do you consult with companies in that way as well?
Yeah, well, that's actually that's our recruiting model. We have an entire pipeline and lead flow system for recruiting salespeople, and so there's a constant engagement process that's happening, that's moving people all the way in, moving to a page. We call it our top producers page. They see videos. They're qualifying themselves all along the way, and we're doing everything we can to disqualify them. So we're showing the same thing with the client. We're showing, are you this high? Are you this tall to ride the ride? You're not? Okay, well, you can't ride here. If you can't, we want to do as much as we can to help them realize, oh, that's not me. Because that's just as equally as important as the person saying, yes, that is me. Right. And it's the same thing with the recruiting process. We're helping people all the way along the way go, yeah, this is not where I want to be. And we never end up talking to those people. But the ones who get over those are, yeah, this is great. I love this. Other people think this is too many clicks and too much work. I don't want to work this hard for my money. And so you're giving them you want to give them a branded experience in your recruiting process. Don't just do what traditional hiring concepts say to do.
Jim, a lot of these philosophies that you're talking about, right, in terms of having a proper sales process for people to go through, that they say, I belong here. Following up with your pipeline of prospects in a constructive manner with your sales team, or nurturing campaigns and all these things, they all sound so simple. Yet You're 100% correct, and I'll be less politically correct. I'd say 99% of companies suck at it. They just completely suck at it. Why? It doesn't sound that complex. I mean, I have a few companies I work with right now that I'm kind of questioning. Man, I really suck at this. We got to do better at that. But it's not because it's rocket science necessarily. Now, certainly there's expertise that, for example, you guys have developed that people don't have. But why do companies, even very sophisticated companies, been around for a long time, why do they suck at this?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, if it was up to the company, it would all be done right because
Yeah.
companies essentially are not human,
Mhm.
but the humans who run the companies are, and humans are all flawed and all fallible. Just like you know, John and Rich, I know for a fact you know that if there's a cheesecake sitting in front of you or a salad, you know which one you're supposed to take. However, which one are we going to take most of the time, especially if no one's watching? Right? We're going to go for the cheesecake because I happen to like cheesecake, so that's my preference. But we know better. We know we're supposed to go to the gym tomorrow, yet we'll look for any excuse not to.
Yep.
Right? It's a matter of having the discipline and the system. You first need to understand what's at stake. Then you need to make sure you can document what that journey is, and then you need to systematize it. And then you need to put somebody in charge of owning it. Once
Yeah.
that happens, then the predictability is there, and the likelihood that it's going to be achieved will be there. So that's the one thing we have learned as a company is that no project will ever win if it doesn't have an owner. So everything that ever gets deployed in our company, one of the first questions we're asking is who owns it. Because if somebody owns it, doesn't mean they have to do it all, but they have to ensure everybody else does their part.
Yep. Well, I
Right.
think also, this speaks to the fractionalized business,
Hmm.
right? In my mind, entrepreneurs are too busy. They're running around putting on fires in their business. It sounds great. We got to work on this system. They just never get to it.
Right.
The sales reps in their business are waiting for the Glengarry leads. They want the Glengarry leads they can go
Yes.
sell. They're not interested in working a pipeline. What are you
Nope.
talking about? Like that's too much work. So I love the fact that you provide this service and capabilities, and I think it's really needed with a lot of companies, even on the consultation perspective. Even if they don't hire you guys to do the sales, a lot of work is needed here. How can companies or individuals listening to this podcast learn more or get more from yourself or gain the edge?
Well, the first thing is go to my personal website, jimp360.com, JIMP360.com. There you'll find access to every way you can reach me, all my social medias, videos about me, our podcast, books, programs. You can learn how to hire us, how to work for us, all of that stuff. Everything that I have all under one location at jimp360.com. But don't do any of that right now. Right now, what I want you to do is go there. At the top on the page, there's a contact button,
Mhm.
and I'm going to talk to you about relationship building here. Okay, no matter how big your company is or what you do, make sure that the human side of contact stays in place. Push the contact button. First button on the top says send a text. Shoot me a text. Give me your name, your email. Tell me, mention the podcast, the Entrepreneurs United show, and I will happily send you some information on how to put a system together. We call it an anti-closer sales system, and I'll send you some resources. And I'd love to talk to you, just hear from you. Right? Don't put more real estate between you and the buyer than necessary. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people are doing with technology. And so I'm trying to demonstrate and role model for you here, give you a way to reach me directly, not give you something to opt into.
Love it. Love it. Thanks a lot for your time today, Jim. This was fantastic.
Yeah, hope sub help. Just take serious action, guys, because you're right now you're at a point where you still have a choice. Soon, if the economy gets crazy, you may not have a choice. So do it while you can, while the choice is yours. You go make a difference in people's lives and make some money.
Thank you, Jim.
Please stick around for a few more minutes while Rich and I break down this episode.
Help them self-identify out of the process. So at the same time where he was saying, allow the person to say, I belong here, he's equally open to and actually would prefer, if it's appropriate, somebody to say, I don't belong here.
Yep.
But let's not have that be a manual process. Let's help them self-identify out of the process so we can end up with QBAs, qualified booked appointments. I love that theory, that philosophy.
Yeah, just having a well-organized sales process and strategy where your prospective potential clients are walking themselves down a path is not easy. And that's why a lot of companies don't do it, and why a company like Jim's can really help set out a strategy. Even if you don't hire up the games to do the sales for you, just help them outline the strategy on the systemized process is so big. And a lot of times, Rich, I think it's like editing your own homework. You don't see the grammatical errors and spelling mistakes. You just can't see them because you're blind to it. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and salespeople in their own companies don't see how lackadaisical their processes are, or how much they're missing in it. Whereas somebody from the outside who's an expert, who's seen multiple companies do it, can really help you. So I really love that approach to having a fractionalized sales expert who can help you with your process. I think it's needed, but for a lot of companies.
Very personally, some of the stuff that he spoke to resonates for me on program development, which is a lot of what I do professionally, where he says, idea, significant problem they have, and it needs to be a bleeding neck problem. Yep. And then help customers identify that they have that problem. I think, and I say this from my experience, but I also offer it to any entrepreneurs, when you're rolling out a new program, if that program is, hey, we're going to track number of outgoing phone calls. The program is, we're going to start having a Thursday sales meeting. Hey, we're going to have an operations and production meeting monthly. Anything could be a program, a leadership program, a sales, anything could be a program. We're all working in those. I think this applies not just where he was talking about for a service, but this applies to how we sell as leaders to the people we lead. If we don't ID programs that we're rolling out to the internal people in our businesses, that the internal people feel they have a bleeding neck problem, they're going to be less likely to adopt that program. And you know what made me think about the whole program side was one of the last things he said that resonated for me was, no project will ever win if it doesn't have an owner. I'm like, wow, that is so true. Is people start projects and they abandon them or hand them off, and there's not full responsibility. And I was just connecting an awful lot of dots in programs as an entrepreneur and what we put out to our internal people.
Absolutely. And when you talk about a bleeding neck problem, I love Jim sharing his personal story with us.
Yes.
And maybe it's a follow-up podcast with Cyndi, but this woman saw a bleeding neck problem in Jim himself.
Yes.
Who didn't see the value that he actually had, and solved that problem for this man and brought him into a different world where he could flourish and grow. And now he himself talks about right? If you serve people in a powerful way, that's what success is really going to be. And she was a model of success for that, for him, and should be for others as well. And now he's passing that forward. So really love that personal touch of husband and wife working together in this venture. But it started well before then, when she really was the root of finding a way to connect with somebody. And I'm sure when he met her, he belonged there, and he felt he belonged there. So the sales process and how these two came together is fairly similar, and very interesting, and certainly very motivating.
Gosh, when you say that, it reminds me of some former podcast guests we had, like Keith Abelow, who had Pain to Power, and C-Rock. And I don't remember what his thing was, but he talked a lot about his upbringing and how he turned something that could have been very negative into something that was very powerful for him. And it was somewhere between episodes 30 and 50 that we had a run of like 5 or 6 people over a 10 podcast period who kept coming back to this, taking things that could be perceived as setbacks and using them to propel yourself forward. And boy, is Jim an example of that. When he talks about the abuse, the foster care, being in jail, divorce, and bankruptcy, and then he turns around and says, you know what I learned? I learned how to read people. I learned how to bend a room to my will because it kept me safe. And now I can use that as I look to overcome things. So, and when I was asked, what was your gift? everything can be overcomable is something that he learned, and is great. He looks at the greatest possible outcome for people and inspire them to take action and overcome obstacles, which is exactly what he did. And I'm confident he can teach other people to do it because he's done it.